Good evening and welcome to the March 4th meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Joe Steiner and I'm the chair of the Zoning Board. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the newspaper of record and has been posted here at City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. For the benefit of the interested public, this meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page and also broadcast on Summit's governmental channel, which is Comcast 34 and Verizon Channel 30. A transcript of this meeting is also being taken using the video and audio. And because of the microphones, we have to use them in order for that to take place appropriately. Please note that the fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room where you entered. The city has a listening system to assist the hearing impaired. If anyone needs hearing assistance, please obtain the system here at the dais and return it thereafter. Ms. Sulios, would you please call the roll of the members?
Sure. Chairman Steiner?
Here.
Vice Chairman Loikitz?
Here.
Mr. Yuko?
Here.
Mr. Nelson?
Here.
Ms. Zahn is excused. Mr. Kieran?
Here.
Mr. Malay?
Here.
Ms. Toth?
Here.
Ms. Chifo? Here. Mr. Feskins is expected but not present. Mr. Chanchuli?
Here.
You have a quorum. You may proceed.
Thank you. Andy Ball is the zoning board's attorney, sitting on my right. He will be advising the board members on matter of law and is the key interface with the applicant's attorney. Mr. Ball does not vote on the applications. Stephanie Sulios is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. She works with applicants on preparing their applications, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Ms. Sulios does not vote on the applications. Also present at the table to my right is Marie Raffi from Collier Engineering, our board engineering firm, who, that's at our right, the audience is left. Also seated at times, not tonight, are our planning consultants, so they're not here because the applications do not require them. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. But before we enter executive session to vote on the application, you will be advised how many votes are required. Each case will begin with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of their application process to date and the variances that are required. We will then hear from any additional expert witnesses that the applicant may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals have completed their questioning, the public has the opportunity to ask questions. This is not the time to tell us what you think about the case. That'll come a little bit later. Before you ask your question, again, come to a microphone and clearly state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address. This is important so that our court reporter is able to keep that clear record for the public if needed. After all witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have that second opportunity to speak, and at that time you may express your opinion, either positive or negative, about the application. Then the public hearing is closed and we enter into executive session where the board members discuss the case and vote. You'll be able to listen to our executive session, but you will normally not be able to participate in that discussion. Krista Anderson, the city zoning officer, has asked that we remind all applicants that they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and pay particular attention to the conditions contained in the resolution. For example, if a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If a grading plan is required, you have to get one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all the conditions in a resolution will result in a delay in approving your application, and it will cause extra work for the city zoning staff. The resolutions documenting the board's decision will normally be available 1 month after we decide that case. We have 3 cases on the agenda tonight. I'm going to handle the first one quickly because we're not actually going to hear it. And that's 77 West End Avenue. Ms. Sulios, would you explain where we are?
Sure. So the applicant has requested to carry the application to May 20th. Do you want me to give the reason why?
If we have it, we should know it.
Sure. So they are actually in a floodplain, so they're working with an engineer to come up with plans on how to move this application forward. So they do need some time, so that's why they've requested until May 20th.
And they are going to waive all.
They're going to waive the board's time to act, and they agreed to renotice because by then several months will have passed.
Okay. Any questions on that?
You said
What's up?
5/20?
May
Yes.
20th.
Mhm.
May 20th.
Would
Okay.
anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move that.
Second.
Chairman Steiner?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Kieran?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, now back to the normal process of business. We, at this point, would ask a representative from 58 Beverly Road, just one person, to come up and tell us how many witnesses you have and how long you think this case will take, if you can complete it in 30 minutes.
Hello, I'm Janet Siegel, the architect. I'm going to briefly recap what we're here to reapply for. And we have Lori and Dave here, the owners, and they may want to speak again.
You think you'll be able to complete it?
I have like a couple of minutes of
Okay.
discussion.
Okay, we'll stay there, because not at the podium, stay up front. Next would be 7 Essex Road. I believe there's an attorney here. And there he is.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. John Vettery entering my appearance on behalf of Stephen and Jesse Aldridge. We have 4 witnesses: Dan DiAgostino from Plan Architecture, Jeff Agarian from Agarian Engineering, Ben Heller, the landscape architect, and John McDonough, professional planner.
I gather you're going to answer my next question in the negative. You're not going to make 30 minutes.
I don't believe so.
About how long?
We'll
do you
spe-
think
I think we should be able to conclude all of the testimony and answer questions within an hour.
Okay, great. All
Okay.
right, stand by. We're
not going
number
anywhere.
2 on the docket.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on back to 58 Beverly Road. Would the applicant step forward, please? Go near a microphone, whoever's going to testify. Oh, you're the expert, we'll leave you next.
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And whoever's testifying one at a time, please state your name, spell your last name.
David Schulman, Shulman.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Schulman, are you going to testify as well, ma'am?
No.
Okay. Mr. Schulman, would you explain to us why you're here and what variances you believe you need? And then once you give us a little bit of background, we'll let your architect carry the heavy water.
Sounds good. So again, David Schulman. We were approved for a few variances back in December of 2022. And in January of 23, I started to experience a weakening of my right hand. Basically, fast forward to middle of the year, turned out to be a diagnosis of ALS. So we rescoped the project, and at this point we're bumping out on one of the sides on the back to make room for enough space in the kitchen to open it up and allow me room to navigate there in a wheelchair at some point. What we're not bumping out or changing the garage anymore, just as to rescope the project didn't make sense. But we are hoping to leave the deck, which puts us over the lot coverage, I believe. And the reason for keeping the deck is really twofold. One is, again, if I'm in a wheelchair, having to go and take a lift or a ramp down to get outside just doesn't make much sense either. So I'd love to be able to just wheel out onto the deck. And then, that's really it. Besides that, it's really in the spirit of what the board agreed to, back then.
Okay. Questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I just have one. You answered my first question, so I want to ask about why you need the deck, why you want to keep the deck. But there was another issue in the last application where your engineer represented that you were going to go to the city to get approval or ask for approval to keep the fence that's in the right of way, and the zoning officer said that has not happened. Would you object to making that a continuing condition of the application?
100%.
And are you-
We've been preoccupied.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Okay, and then I think the suggestion was that we put a date on that.
Yeah.
And when we get to that in the resolution, we'll put a date on it so you'll know when you have to do what you have to do.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm assuming you wish to have your architect present the nuts and bolts of the project?
Yes, please.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, let's move on.
Thank you.
Would you, our attorney will swear you in.
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Janet Siegel, Siegel.
Thank you, and I know you've appeared before us a number of times, including relatively recently. Any changes to your credentials since the last time you were in front of the board?
None.
I imagine the board would like to accept you once again.
Any questions from anyone? I go back to Saturday's presentation when the board had some training, that this is the time at any point that if you think that there's something you might be asking in depth and you want to make sure that that expert has the expertise, this is the only time you can challenge. You can't do that halfway through the presentation. So let's assume that this had a water issue or something like that, drainage issue. This would be the time to vet out her expertise on that particular matter, but I'm not sure we need to do that. So let's accept her qualifications and move on. Please.
Thank you. Just to qualify, back in December when we were here in December 5th, 2022, this project was approved. It had numerous aspects to it. If you recall, we were changing a side entry garage to a front garage. We were adapting that garage and making it larger so cars could fit into the garage cleanly. And we're doing the rear bump out from the kitchen. Part of that included changing the existing deck to a patio. That was our gain of a lot of building coverage that was removed, which allowed us to lower the building coverage requirement. So in going back to looking at this, when they came back to me and said we need to make some adjustments, the kitchen was the obvious thing to keep. It left the space they need to live and operate in the home. But the deck was something that we chose to keep that has an immediate exit. I actually have a photograph if that's something that I can share.
Yeah, if you'd like to enter it,
Yes.
it'll be A1. And just bring it up here, we'll pass it, and we'll mark it A1 for you.
It's It's a photograph of the rear deck that we would like to keep. Initially, in the original proposal, we were removing it and putting a lower patio with stairs. This way, that does have a photograph of the door. That door stays in the same location with this addition, and that will allow easy access. There's no, it's actually pretty interesting. There isn't even a drop. It's a flush deck to the door, so it's actually perfect for the situation we need. That kept our building coverage number higher because we still added the small bump out for the kitchen, no additions to the garage. The FAR number was changed slightly because we didn't make any adjustments to the garage. We were actually taking livable space and creating garage area. So in the end, the numbers that were created from that was originally, I'll go back to the original numbers, of existing building coverage was 21.8. The approved was 21.1, and we are requesting 22%. The FAR was 28.5. The previous approved was 29.2, and now our request is 28.9. So minor numbers, but everything went up and down based on the fact that the deck our request is to not remove the deck. How we approached this in building was we did a phase 1, phase 2. We moved ahead with the building, which is the kitchen bump out by way of the building department, because that was conforming. The deck was the only issue that brought us back to you because the building coverage did not go down. So that is our request this evening. If you have any other questions.
I may have missed it while I was passing that thing. FAR is brought up by our zoning officer, proposed where 25 is the maximum permitted, and you're at 28.9.
Right, the existing on the house was 28.5, so we were non-conforming. We were approved for 29.2, and then our revised number is going to be 28.9. So we were approved for the larger FAR. We're actually lowering what we were approved for, so it's just a number moving. But yes, the allowable is 25.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Questions for the,
Yeah, I have a quick question and clarification. Are you seeking to maintain all the other variances that were granted in the prior resolution except for the modification of those three, the setback, the FAR, and the building coverage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
okay, questions from the board? Marie, let me go to our expert. Marie, do you have any?
No, I don't have any additional questions.
Okay.
Can you remind us what zone this is in?
This is in the just hold on,
R10?
R10.
And what is the minimum requirement for a lot in the R10 zone? I believe it's 10,000 square feet.
10,000.
It's fine.
And what is your size of lot?
Our lot size is 9,180.
So less than 10,000?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And if it were 10,000,
We wouldn't be here.
we wouldn't be here. I figured you'd do the math quicker than I would. Okay. Any other questions from the board? Tom, I thought you said you had a second one.
It was explained by the applicant in the earlier.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Any other questions? Okay, do either of you have anything else to tell us in summation? Okay, are there any members of the public who have questions for either of the two witnesses? Because I forgot to do it individually, but we'll do it together. Seeing none, is there anyone who has anything that they would like to say about the project directly? You know, not just questions, opinions, anything. Seeing none?
Chairman Steiner, before we move on, I'm sorry, my brain's a little slow tonight. I know one of the stipulations is to remove the fence in the right-of-way.
Not removing it.
It's to
Move
seek approval from the city to maintain it.
Okay.
If they say no, then that would be the city's decision.
Okay, and then what would happen if they said no, they'd have to move it, or,
Yes.
okay.
Right, but they'll have to, and what should we put on, as long as we're talking about it, should we come up with a date that the application is to be made to the city by?
We can. That helps make things nice and clear. How long do you anticipate you would need to submit that request to the city?
It could be set on the closer near to the C of O of the work that's happening now. They have there's a permit active on interior work.
Does that work? It's really a letter that you have to send to the city requesting it, requesting what you're trying to do here. And that has to be done by the property owner.
I think ideally, we'd like to see it, a proposed date. Doesn't necessarily need to be immediately, but something that you're comfortable with.
How about
committing
30
to.
days after the resolution is adopted?
That sounds fine. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would that work?
Great.
Because it's 30 days till you get the resolution, and then 30 days thereafter.
Perfect.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Okay, let's go into executive session. What are our resolutions, our conditions?
Certainly. So our usual, first, compliance with those conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum. And second, as we were just discussing, the applicant shall submit a request within 30 days after receipt of the resolution of approval to the Common Council to retain an existing fence in the Fremont right-of-way.
Okay, those are the only two. Who wants to start off deliberations on the board?
I'll
Tom?
start. So I can support this application. It's really, when you get right down to it, it's really a fairly modest application. It's understandable why the applicant has changed his mind about keeping the deck. The FAR increase is relatively, well, actually, it's a decrease. It's a decrease from what we had approved before, and the building coverage increase is relatively modest, and as was brought out by Mr. Liketts in his questioning, we wouldn't be here if this were a fully sized lot for the zone. I'm happy the applicant is going to pursue city approval of, keeping the fence in the right of way. I'd like to see you get that approval, but that's not up to us. That's up to the city council. So I can support the application.
I too can support the application, particularly as it affects the deck. Given that the deck is already there, we know the effect that it has on the lot, on the neighbors. So maintaining it, we already know that the property can support the deck. You're not encroaching on the neighbors. It's a very low deck. So maintaining the status quo is fairly straightforward. I too can support this application.
Anyone on this side? Okay, what I will say is that I don't see any negatives, and I see a very strong positive of keeping someone with the dreaded disease in their home for as long as possible with their family, and then I can't see a more important positive than family life, especially in this community where we do that as much as we possibly can, and I certainly can support this application and would seek a motion to move ahead and approve it.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Chairman Steiner?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Liketts?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Kieran?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Good luck. Please make sure that you read every sentence in the resolution when it comes and follow everything that's on there. Thank you. And we will move on to 7 Essex. You want to bring your experts further up?
All right, come on up, gang.
What? I'm sorry?
Mr. Conway, he's hanging out.
I don't think so.
He's just watching.
I guess we're ready to go.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As I had entered my appearance earlier, John Vettery on behalf of Stephen and Jesse Aldridge. Before I proceed to do a lot of zoning work in lots of towns all over New Jersey, I just want to thank Stephanie and Krista, very helpful throughout the whole process. You have a very organized approach to doing this, and I can tell you many of your neighbors do not, so thank you. It's almost a year since we had the house closing for the Aldridges. They have not moved in yet, and they took a long time to go through the plans with their professionals and really come up with a very special and elegant addition to the home for a very special and elegant home. You're going to hear a lot about what we've done to preserve the integrity of this home from the architect and even from the landscape architect as well as the planner. The variances that we're seeking this evening are two. The first, and there was a lot of dialogue about the first one prior to the closing that we had. We were made aware that back in 2015, there was a garage, second floor of that garage was permitted for storage only. As part of the certificate of occupancy process, we discovered that the actual use was more of a finished space. So we had two alternatives. One was to dismantle what was done in that area, or prior to occupancy of the home, come back and seek relief from the board. As you'll see, the use that's proposed is certainly not an apartment, it's not for sleeping space. The space that's currently used for storage is being proposed this evening for a fitness and yoga area. And you're going to hear more about that. There are no proposed changes to what's inside from what's there. Everything will be made sure that it is completely compliant from a fire standpoint, and any of the exterior is being kept exactly as it is. The other variance is a variance that is the steep slope variance. So there's a disturbance to the steep slope in the area to permit the driveway and to permit the house addition. We're going to hear from the professional engineer that substantial drainage improvements are being proposed on the site, whereas there are very few now that will not cause any negative impact to the neighbors, to the city of Summit, or certainly to this property. So as I mentioned, the lineup this evening is we have the professional architect, Dan D'Agostino, Jeff Agarian as the professional engineer, Ben Heller as the landscape architect, and John McDonough as the professional planner. I would like to start introducing Dan D'Agostino from Plan Architecture. Dan?
Okay, before we do that, are there any questions for the attorney from the board?
I do have a question. I'm trying to find the details of it. It was something, I just wrote a note here, something about a deed restriction that was supposed to be recorded at some point. I forget exactly what it was about. Does that ring a bell?
I think there was something that showed up in the 2015 resolution. I have a copy here, and
Yeah.
as we're speaking about it, I'll find exactly what it was.
I'll try to find it too.
If the board, sees fit to want to, if there's a need for a deed restriction here, I'm sure that's something that will not be an issue.
Okay.
Okay, Dan?
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Sure, it's Daniel D'Agostino, D''A, Gostino.
Thank you. And can you briefly describe your background and experience for the board?
Certainly. I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. I received my degree at the New Jersey School of Architecture at NJIT in 2006. I've appeared before many boards across the state. I've always been considered an expert in my field. I currently sit on the zoning board in Township of Washington, so I empathize with all of you. Specific to this residence, my practice has had a focus on custom single-family homes. I have a history having worked with the State Historic Office of Preservation. I've done many projects as consultant work, so it seemed like a great fit for me on such a valuable historic home.
I offer Mr. D'Agostino as an expert in the area of architecture.
You need to use a microphone. You can use the handheld if you'd like.
Sure.
Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept his credentials?
Okay, we will accept his credentials and leave it up to the attorney to move ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. D'Agostino. If you would give an overview of the plans for the board.
Certainly. Would you prefer that I move to the center, or is this, okay, this is just a copy of what you've received in your packets. Okay. So I would like to actually start with the site plan. And I'm going to refer to the existing site plan. That's sheet 2 of DG and Associates. This is the existing site plan. So as was mentioned earlier, I had first met Jesse and Steve Aldridge prior to them purchasing this property. We had evaluated the home. It had been on the market for some time. It came across their interest, and I visited the site with them. As a family at the time, they had 3 children, and she was expecting. They now have a 1-year-old. There were a couple of things that they wanted from this home, not too atypical from what other potential buyers were saying. Beautiful home, a ton of charm, small, needs a ton of work, probably needs some substantial additions and renovations, a lot of love. And for such a large property, because it is a large property, there wasn't any valuable yard space for a family with kids. So my analysis was that this home, although it's beautiful and sited in a fantastic way, I thought that the house was actually designed backwards and being used backwards. And what I mean by that is, we typically expect a front door to be on the front of the house. And there is no front door on the front of this home. There is a door that you could walk through, but there's no way to actually get to that front door. The other thing you ordinarily see when you see a residential home, especially in a town like Summit, you come up a driveway, and you often have the ability to either pull in front of it or pull past the front door and walk along a pathway to the front door. That doesn't exist here. Most homes, you also have a front lawn. That front lawn is proximate to the front door. You have the ability to play there. In this on this site, and we characterize it as steep slope by your ordinance, that's not a play area in front. So my initial reaction was, all right, let's try to figure out a way to give them a backyard that would be substantial and valuable to them. Second thing I did as an architect is understanding this home and the character of the home. It was important that any of my improvements be done without affecting the front facade of this house. So by and large, all of the improvements that we've made to this home are not visible from the front. The last consideration I had was that I wanted everything that we had planned to fit modern living. And the home, as it currently exists, required me to go a little bit larger with my additions. So I played practical mind to the zoning ordinance strictly. As was noted, we are not going for any bulk variances. We're not looking for setback variances. We're well under FAR. We're simply here for that garage, as was noted, and I'll touch base on that, as well as the steep slope to have the driveway in front. I think it'd be valuable for me to walk you through the plans, just so you have I won't waste much of your time on this, but you'll have an idea of the home. The home is essentially characterized by a long and narrow house. You would not expect a home of this size, especially from what it appears from the front, to have a kitchen that's only 11.5 feet wide, for instance. You have these in your packet, so I don't have to go through each individual room, but the first floor is a family room, a dining room, a kitchen, a living room, and a guest suite. This second floor, basement is largely unfinished, multiple utility areas and a sitting area with not much of a head height. The second floor consists of 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, the fourth being the primary. There's an oversized hall and a small sitting area on that upper level. In the attic, which is really less than a half a story of the existing structure, there's a bathroom which by today's code standards would not be considered habitable because of the amount of height restrictions, an open attic and a storage, and we're not proposing any work there. The first plan that we have in our set that illustrates our proposed work, everything south of the page, we've actually got an indicator on each sheet so that it's easy to reference what's new and what's old. The old house, we're breaking up the storage area into an all-pairs bedroom, and then we have a lounge and a playroom for the family. On the first floor, we've got a 3-car garage attached, because there is no garage attached to the structure as there is. We've got a side entry through a mudroom, family room, which is going to have an eat-in area open to a kitchen, a pantry which leads into the main house, And then the focus of all of this is that outdoor lawn space that we were creating. We are repurposing the existing home. We're going to do the best to save any millwork and any ceilings that are of interest, but we're turning the kitchen into a dining room, the existing sitting area into a living area, the existing family room, we're going to actually place a bar and have a lounge space for them for music listening that'll go out into the terrace. So we're trying to engage the existing home with the rear yard. Moving to the upper floor. So we come up our main stair or the proposed back stair. There's a primary suite. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, and we're keeping the second floor lounge. That's 1 bedroom for each kid. And then the last drawing that we added to our set, this was requested at Krista's request, was showing square footage of habitable areas. This was how we were able to demonstrate that we're well under the FAR for this home.
This was on the plan?
This was on the plan. No, not originally. This may need to be submitted as an exhibit.
I think it may have been submitted within the 10-day period, but we can introduce it as an exhibit if you like.
Okay.
If we don't have it, then yes, it has to be an exhibit.
Okay, so
So,
yes,
if I could-
sure.
should we
So
call it
why don't
A1?
we Mark this as A1, and just describe it, please.
So on roughly February 20th, Krista reached out to our office. She asked that we provide this drawing, which would indicate areas that's indicated in green, that the attic space is greater than 5 feet, but no greater than 7 feet in height, and also that we indicate areas that are 7 feet or greater. And she utilized the information that we provided, did her own FAR calculation, and demonstrated to us in her response letter that we were well within the requirements of that.
Thank you.
The roof. I'd like to indicate that in order to preserve the look of the house at the rear, we matched the roof pitches. The only way that you could really match the roof pitch of the existing home, which was roughly 28 feet wide, in the addition we're proposing while complying with all the zoning regulations, would be to introduce a flat roof in the center. This makes construction a lot more complex, but it's something that you see in modern living. So from all of the renderings, you'd never guess it, but there is a low-pitched roof to conceal and make this addition possible.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Certainly.
Because I wasn't quite sure if what you're saying is you have a flat roof that we can't see, or that you lowered the pitch of the roof?
No, we matched the pitch. We wanted to make this look as close as possible to the existing structure. So in the center, and again, you would never see it unless you were in a drone or an airplane, the middle space of the addition is what we call a low pitch roof. So that'll have 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. It's going to behave the same way any other roof would be. It doesn't, I mean, everyone's afraid of hearing the word flat roof because they think modern. In this case, this is a typical mansard roof that we're employing. The one improvement that we made beyond the driveway and the turnaround space at the front was the addition of a portico, which I'm going to come back to. There was a review comment that we received from the HPC that we came up with 2 options in the short time since we received that letter tonight, which I'll review with this board. This is an enlargement of the front, the real front, the street-facing front, where we proposed a portico, so that anybody that gets out of their car in this front area can walk up and actually approach the home. The rear of the home, what we've done here is we've matched all of the details of the house, the board and batten, the stucco. We are currently in the process of identifying clinker brick, which is the type of brick, it's very hard to do. We want to match the brick as closely as possible. The brick on this house is not even a standard size brick, so that compounds it. There are certain details, floral details, for lack of a better description, that are on the that we are replicating. One of the things that we've tried to do, and my work with other homes with historic significance, is we try to avoid mimicking the home. We try to make a distinction between what was done in 2024 and what was done originally, but doing it all tastefully. So you'll notice that in our additions, the expanses of the windows are a little bit bigger than you see in the rest of the house, but all of the detailing of the windows and all of the detailing of the sills will remain with the historic detailing of the house. I should bounce to the HPC comment. So these renderings, these are photorealistic.
Before we get to the
Sure.
HPC, I'd just like you to address the changes or the use in the garage. Just
Oh, okay.
Go back to
Sure.
the page that you were on.
So I don't have any knowledge, obviously, of what the homeowners before did, but I can simply provide testimony of what I observed there. This is an existing one-story detached accessory garage. It is located very close to the side lot line. I don't actually know if the former owners constructed this structure and had it approved, or if it's something that would be grandfathered. From my interpretation, anytime we start a project with something that was existing, it's a grandfathered use, a grandfathered, assuming it was approved. Okay. In this case, what you'll see at the bottom of this page, and for reference, I'm referring to sheet A.600. The second floor, at some point in time, received a cork floor or wood rug floor, shiplap in a wood finish ceiling. There were existing collar ties that they added lights to. There was a television, and there was a wall unit for air conditioning.
No plumbing?
No plumbing. No. I would love to be able to tell you. So these walls here, they go all the way down to 2 feet off the ground. I have been in this space. I would say that probably the center of the space, these collar ties probably come down to about 8 feet, and therefore the middle of the space probably goes up to about 9.5 feet. They used it as a gym, and Steve and Jesse would love to do that as well.
So if I can interrupt, because this goes back to the
Sure.
deed restriction.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
found it was in 2008.
2008.
So in 2008, when this space was approved, it was approved as storage. As I said, former owners used it, not as overnight accommodations, but they used it as a gym. We're proposing the same, rather than rip out the improvements that were there. It's a very passive use. It makes sense to put it there. The applicant would be willing to actually make that deed restriction, that there will be no overnight accommodations, and we'll properly record that. It was never done, never showed up in title, and it was something that did come up prior to our closing, when we did get the Oprah request back from the City of Summit, seeing the resolutions.
So just for the complete record, for the 2008 resolution asked for a deed restriction that said the space over the garage be primarily storage and under no circumstances used for overnight accommodation. So I'm going to gather, since that was never recorded, what you're proposing now is a slightly different restriction.
Correct.
That it would be no overnight usage, but would refer to some, I don't know how you would word it, but except
Probably
this kind of
just the
use.
last portion of it that, we would agree not to use the space for overnight accommodations. Or, if you want to expand it further, it would not be used for a separate apartment. That would be against zoning anyway, but, we can expand it that and it can come up with language with Counselor Ball with respect to that in the resolution.
And I just make sure I heard right, you said there is no plumbing and there's no plans to change.
No, it's simply,
In your visual inspection of I'm assuming you went out and looked at this garage. They got permission to put in a car lift. Was there any evidence of that was ever done?
no. I'd be shocked if someone was able to get
I'm reading the report here that says that that's what was approved.
From my experience, the ceiling height would have to be much larger than what's here. You'd be lifting the car into the ceiling. Ordinarily, for a structure like this, you'd have to actually remove those ceiling joists and introduce a ridge beam to hold the roof up. Not to get too technical here, but my understanding is this space would have to be inspected by the electrical inspector, and I guess insulation.
And that we would have to demonstrate that the fire rating is completely up to code, and the applicant is certainly willing to do all of those things.
There's no, somebody said there's an air conditioning unit?
Yeah, right here. It's one of those Mitsubishi.
Not those things?
Yes, yes,
Where's the condenser outside?
right on the outside.
Which actually is another thing, if we can talk about it now, it'd be good. You noted that it's near the property line. One of the reports, it might have been the zoning officer, said it appears it might be over the property line, or at least partially over the property line.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
notice that.
So the property engineer will speak to that, and
Okay.
then we could relocate that if the board sees fit, so that it's compliant.
Okay.
Real quick, I guess
Sure.
you have to go back and get it, was installed out of net.
So we would have to get it inspected, and it'd have to be permitted. Yeah.
I just noticed that on your drawing, page marked A202, the proposed second floor.
Yes.
You've also got a workout yoga room there.
Yeah, should this not be approved?
Okay. Okay. It just seemed like,
The safe room would become double the size. that it
okay,
is.
okay, thank you.
Marie, do you have any, before we seem to be getting off track here, so let's try to bring it back.
I'll see if the engineer.
Okay. Do you have any, okay, let's let him finish his
Just
presentation
the exhibit,
before
so
we.
we do have an exhibit to present to the board, which is an exhibit to explain the exhibit. This came out of the HPC comment with respect to the entrance.
Sure.
So we're going to mark that as exhibit A2.
Great, and I have a little large scale.
Okay, if you would describe the exhibit for the board.
Well, prior to doing that, just for context alone, I guess these are just the renderings of the rear of the home. So I was going to show, I thought I had shown it. Yes, I did show it in here. So just for context, this was our original proposal for the front portico. As I stated earlier, I feel relatively strongly that whenever you're doing something to a structure, you should distinguish between what's new and what's old. In that context, I had come up with this. We had received, and to further clarify this, it's a very, I don't want to use the word modern because it's not the best term, but it's a modern interpretation of a traditional column. So it's not turned, it's not trying to be something it isn't, and it's got a copper roof. That copper roof has a subtle curve to it, and that curve was to relate to the underside of the existing bay window that had a curve. We had received comments, and I'm not certain what the protocol is here. We only received this about 10 days ago. So what we did was the town comments from the HPC member directed us to the design guide for the Summit downtown, which we went to, and it wasn't specifically helpful with regard to this. They made a comment that there are other homes in the area that we could potentially reference. They also made a comment that there were other entrances on the home. So going back to where I started my presentation, I went to the existing front door for inspiration. I've come up with two versions. The existing home doesn't have any covered entries. Most people do want covered entries. It's a great place to grab your keys, to give you an opportunity to stand if it's ever raining. I came up with two options. One option is flush, or slightly projecting as a pediment to the house. The second option is actually providing cover, similar to the other version that we did. What we did was we copied this pointed arch. We introduced a roof that would be flat, not have a presence, trying to mimic what was there. I'm not, as I said, I'm not sure what the protocol is. Our preference here would be to go with option 2. Neither option proposes any zoning issues. There's no coverage issue or setback issue as a result of either. I guess we would go for a certificate of appropriateness.
I think the point we'd like to convey to the board is that the applicant's willing to work with the HPC to arrive at a final design. We may not arrive at it if the board has comments on it. We've come up with a thoughtful reaction to the comment, and we're willing to continue to work with the HPC to arrive at a mutually agreeable plan.
I would like to add a few things here. First of all, the main concept in changing the whole scenario of the backyard being a driveway reachable to a front driveway with a nice parking spot that will be seen from the curb, really, and will block somehow the view of the pretty house, beautiful house you have. My concern here is, number one, let's say the other neighbors, they want, of course, this is an oversized property. And because it's an oversized property, we have the luxury of allowing that. Let's say all the neighbors want to do the same. That is a master violation of the master plan. Please explain to me if I'm wrong here. This is a violation of the master plan. Front yard is front yard. You can have a walkway. You can have a nice entrance and a nice, but parking in front, I think this is not what the master plan has in mind.
So let me just to respond to that, Commissioner, the variance that we're seeking tonight is for the steep slope. I don't think that the parking in the front is a violation or will be violative of the master plan in any way. And every application, as you know, stands on its own. We think that this application, and we're just hearing the architectural testimony, we're going to hear the engineering testimony, we're going to hear testimony from the landscape architecture with regard to the trees and shrubbery, as well as the planner's testimony to give the board the legal reasons with respect to C1 and C2 to allow the board to grant this variance should they see fit to do that. The objection is if I understand what you're saying, is the area in the front that allows for some drop-off and parking as shown on the plans?
No, my comment was really on the concept of shifting the whole driveway from the backyard to the front yard. That was my exception. Not the other.
As council noted, there are no variances associated with that proposal, correct?
Side slope?
No.
Side slope?
In fact, I'm not familiar with the section of the master plan, but most master plans for residential districts, they're encouraging the use of homes in practical measures. And from my experience, it's not impractical to have a half circle or a semicircular driveway in any residential district. And I don't believe your code has a moratorium on that either, or prohibition on that.
Yeah, and the driveway, it triggers the steep slope variance, but there's no variance,
Right.
there's no variance needed for the driveway per
For the
se.
parking area location or anything along those
Steep
lines.
slope determines the location of.
Well, that's the hardship that we're facing here. It probably is worth noting that we went through a formal application. We submitted the plans to the board. I'm sorry, we submitted the plans to the town, and I had gotten a phone call from the engineer. Essentially, we did, on the left side of the property, we did a straight run driveway. You have it on your side?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff can testify, the engineer can testify to this, but there was an analysis done showing a driveway on the left.
But I would like to,
Sure, go ahead.
to show, as a designer, to get up a steep slope, which is a problem, because we're so much higher than the street, the best way to tackle that is to go on a diagonal, okay? Because that makes the driveway the least steep. That wasn't something we were proposing. Our first application was to come straight up. What that did was two things. It made us put the driveway on the lot line because we were trying to minimize steep slope. We managed to comply with steep slope by like 1 square foot, but the result of that was another variance. We had too steep of a driveway. Your code, I believe, the requirement is it has to be no greater than 10 degrees, and we were at 12 on that. So, you know, by all intents and purposes, this property does not permit a driveway. And when we were doing that, we wound up with a 6.5-foot retaining wall to hold up this driveway. And we didn't get a denial, but we got a very strong message that we should revisit this. So 3 months later, we came back with the proposal that's before you.
Just for giggles, what's the degrees on the current driveway? Did you do that or no?
We didn't, but it runs a little bit further, but the center of it is probably about the same. I mean, I probably should have started with, I don't like coming to boards like this. I think that zoning rules are there for a reason, unless there's a true hardship, and I don't think there's a better example of a hardship here. There would be no way that you could even get to the back detached garage, which is not a function of modern living, without having this problem.
The existing driveway was there for so long, and it was working and serving the garages, I guess. What changed?
Well, it's not.
That's what we're asking for under this application.
For sure. I think the biggest distinction I could make that any family would want is a garage attached to their home. And if you put any garage on this home, there's no way that you're getting to it without rerouting the driveway. You know, and then the other thing that's valuable, and it's supported by most master plans, is having a private area in the backyard of a home. And right now, it's all blacktop. 100% of the flat area of their yard is blacktop.
I can see the advantage in that, but I can't see the advantage of having a parking area in front of the house blocking the view.
So our engineer is going to speak to that. There's significant topography from the road, and the engineer will speak to the amount of distance, the topo, and the existing plantings that are there. And we have a landscape architect that's here as well that can speak to some additional plantings. I think from a visual standpoint, and the experts will testify this, it would be very hard to see vehicles that are parked up there if you're standing on Essex.
Right. And I also don't think that it would be blocking the view of the home.
I have a feeling that this is going to come up again later, and it's probably going to come up in executive session, so let's take you've given us an answer. Do we have any other questions for him?
I have no further questions of the witness.
Board, Marie, you wanted at the end.
No, I'm good, thank you.
You're good. Anybody else from the board have questions?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the correct time, but I'll ask it anyway. Was there any consideration of making that parking area smaller?
We could. It would either exist or not exist. That's the minimum amount of space that we could pull head in, back up, and turn around.
Because obviously if you reduce that, you reduce the amount of steep slope that you disturb.
Correct. The only thing that we could do here is have a pull-off. So essentially,
Pull in.
exactly, just as an aside or something to think about, it is a steep driveway to walk up. So if you park on the street, and I've done it as well, if they're having guests, it would be nice to give the guests an opportunity to park in front. But again, that would be an improvement, and that would reduce the steep slope disturbance.
All right. Any questions on this side?
Yes, I have a question. So you're adding a 3-car attached garage, and then there is already a 2-car garage that's separate. So why do you need more? Did you consider just having the driveway come to the front and not have those extra parking spots? Since you do have basically spots for 5 cars technically in
We
the
could do
garage.
that. We could do that.
I just recall I'm reading the master plan on my phone. I'm not ignoring you. I keep it handy. But I know although each applicant's on its own, we did have another application a while ago with another historic home where they spoke about basically the need, if the Amazon driver comes and drops things off, you know, or somebody's picking up their kids, the need to get past them beyond the front door, and certainly the need for the delivery driver to be able to turn around. So, I mean, is your proposed parking area beyond the scope of that?
No,
Or,
it-
okay.
If you were to pull in to the back of the house, whoever is, without the benefit of being able to pull into a garage bay, you're gonna be doing a multiple, more than just a K-turn. It's gonna be cumbersome. So that's why we did the turnaround in the front.
Anything else from anybody else on the board? Anybody in the public have a question for this witness? No questions? We will move on to your next witness, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next witness is Jeff Agarian, who's going to testify in the area of professional engineering.
Can I ask a question? Are we getting copies of the proposed changes to the front
Yes.
that you mentioned?
Erroneously porting them.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this is A2. I thought these were passed out already. Apologies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you start, let us get these out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Jeff Egarian, Egarian.
Thank you, and can you briefly describe your background and experience, please?
Sure. I am a licensed professional engineer. My license is in good standing. I'm a graduate of the New Jersey Institute of Technology in 2006, licensed in 2012, and I have testified before this board in the past, not recently, but I have, and many other land use boards throughout northern New Jersey on similar land use matters.
And I take it the license is in New Jersey, correct?
Correct, yes.
Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept his credentials?
Okay. Your credentials are accepted, and
Thank you,
your
Mr.
attorney
Chairman.
has some questions.
Okay, Mr. Agarian, if you would give an overview of the site plan. There are some questions that we want to make sure that are answered, and then we can take it from here.
Sure. I'll just grab the mic and
The green light has to be on.
okay. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the plan that we submitted to the board. On the left side of the sheet, we have our existing conditions, which is also depicting our removal plan. This is the portion of this hatched portion of the driveway here is the portion of the driveway that we're proposing to remove, along with the portion of an existing patio that we will be removing as well as part of the improvements of our project. Another thing we're doing is we're indicating the 6 trees in the front of the property to be removed to allow for the new driveway alignment. On the right side of the sheet, on page 2, we have the steep slope map. On the map itself, we did include the building footprint line, so you can see how the proposed building footprint will interact with the existing steep slope property. The darker hatching is the hatching of the 15% or more, which is the highly regulated slope in Summit. And as you can see, the proposed addition touches it's approximately 300 square feet of that area. So it is in line with the existing topography on the property, the existing disturbed property for the driveway, and is barely touching the 15% steep slope area, which is already disturbed if you look at the existing patio area, because that patio needs to be disturbed in order to create that area. So as you can see from the topography, the lot does have significant topography change in elevation from east to west, from the rear of the property towards Essex Road change in elevation of approximately 42 feet. The property is well maintained with mature trees and mature landscaping and lawn. The surface water's current drainage pattern flows from east to west, with the lot primarily draining towards Essex Road. I'll switch over to sheet 3 now so we can talk about the proposed plan. The disturbance of the steep slope is necessary to construct the improvements on the property. The new building addition, which includes the garage access, requires a new driveway alignment to access the garage in the rear. As Dan pointed out, we did have several iterations. We did bring one iteration of the driveway alignment to have the direct alignment along the northern property line. Even with that alignment, we still would require a variance for slope disturbance of 50%, and also we would have had about approximately 150 linear feet of retaining wall along this northern property line with a maximum height of 6 feet, which, you know, as the more we looked at that alignment was just not suitable from a design perspective. So further on, the construction of the new driveway along the front face of the dwelling accounts for the majority of the slope disturbance. Unfortunately, given the topography of the lot, it's impossible to design the driveway in conformity with the steep slope ordinance. The driveway has been carefully designed to limit the disturbance, implementing retaining walls in lieu of regrading. The retaining walls also allows us to save additional mature trees in the front yard. The walls, which begin right here at the curve of the radius and end at the northern property line, range in height from 0 feet to 6 feet. At its highest, on a very small portion, 6-foot portion of the retaining wall is right here, one small portion along the northern property line. We are proposing fall protection along with guide rail, and it will be added for increased safety along the top of the retaining wall. The guide rail will be installed primarily along the northern portion of the property line, so from this alignment here to just about the parking area. Standard details for guide rail installation require the post of the guide rail to be approximately 3 feet from the front face of the wall. The alignment was checked using our vehicle tracking software to ensure that a standard passenger vehicle can easily maneuver the driveway to access the rear-facing building addition. The typical wood beam guide rail, which was assumed for this application, has an approximate height of 2 feet above the top of the wall. I do have an exhibit, if the board is interested in showing the actual vehicle alignment traversing to the back of the property through this driveway alignment in that area. Further retaining wall calculations, details, structural reports, along with guide rail details will be provided given a favorable vote on the application.
So with respect to the driveway alignment, why don't we mark that as Exhibit A3?
This is the standard sheet.
This has been submitted?
Yes,
Okay.
the plan that Dan testified to earlier was the last sheet, which was the alternative alignment that we prepared. This was the alternative alignment that we explored originally.
That was
So this
submitted.
is an example.
Yep, that was it.
Yes. So in addition to the driveway improvements, we are proposing significant stormwater management improvements for the property. With the increase in impervious coverage for the proposed building addition, the covered porch, and the patio, we are proposing a series of 1,290-gallon seepage tanks to be installed here. All the roof leaders from the proposed addition will be connected, and we also are indicating some yard drains strategically placed around the proposed walkway to account for any ponding or standing water that may occur in that area. One of the comments that we received from the city engineer was with respect to these drains themselves and the quantities of the contributing drainage area and the quantity of the volume for those two tanks. And in our pre-meeting, we discussed this system itself, and we are prepared to add additional volume for these two tanks. So to account for those extra drainage areas and those yard limits, we are going to propose an additional 1,290-gallon tank in the south portion of the property in series with the two tanks that we're proposing now. Those 3 tanks alone will provide approximately 1,600 cubic feet of storage. which clearly is going to be a net benefit to the project. Currently, so therefore, all this stormwater will then be routed and stored underground, replenishing groundwater, reducing erosion, and not having any negative impact on the adjacent properties. Another improvement that we are proposing, that we were discussing in our pre-meeting, and this is an exhibit. I have a sheet 3 of 3, but we are proposing some additional drainage for the driveway area itself. Would you like me to mark this?
Yes.
Sure, mark that as 8. That'll be 8.
That's different than what we have.
Yes, this is an exhibit. It's the same site plan. I'll discuss the additional drainage that we're proposing. So in addition to the seepage tanks we are already proposing on the plan, we decided to account for roughly 5,000 square feet of existing driveway area that we will now be taking to another series of seepage tanks. Approximately 5,000 square feet of driveway, starting from the detached garage all the way up to the front turnaround area, this bump out area. We'll be routing that through a series of catch basins, and again providing 1,290 gallon seepage tanks.
And where are those tanks going to be?
They're going to be right in the driveway, 1,
Okay.
2, and
Okay.
3. Okay. So all combined with the proposed stormwater management system, we are proposing approximately 25,000 gallons of storage capacity with the 6 1,290 gallon tanks for this project. Obviously, the benefit of having 25,000 gallons storage is significant for this project, for this property, and it is only going to be a benefit to the existing stormwater conditions. And just quickly right here too, you can see very clearly that we do have our vehicle alignment accessing the driveway garage to the rear, and it does make clear of the guide rail and has ample width for a vehicle to maneuver back through there.
And just to reiterate, it's your engineering testimony that should the board approve this application, there are significant improvements, not only no net runoff, but there are significant improvements to drainage for this property, the city of Summit, and the adjacent properties.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
And then just quickly, I'll touch on the other benefits too, as far as the steep slope ordinance goes. And they're in place to protect the environment, especially this increased erosion, the maintaining natural drainage patterns, and protection of water quality. So given the size of the lot, the improvements have been proposed in a manner that limit the amount of disturbance. The use of the retaining walls further reduces the steep slope disturbance and does not significantly alter the existing drainage patterns. And the project will have an increase, project will not have an increase in erosion over what naturally occurs, and the implementation of these stormwater management systems will be a benefit to groundwater recharge and not have a negative effect on our water quality.
Thank you. The only follow-up question I have is Commissioner Upco asked about the condenser for the garage. Can that be relocated to an area so as not to cause a variance?
Yes, we can find a spot for it.
Thank you. All right, no further questions of the witness.
And I think that point would probably be a condition of approval is the relocation of that condenser.
Rory?
So your testimony is to place a location without
Can we
needing variance,
cook,
would be
Tom?
totally permissible location.
Tom, can we start with,
We're
clarifying what you
just
said.
clarifying the condition.
okay.
So your testimony is you can place a location that will not require variance.
We're talking about for the AC unit?
Yes.
Yes.
By the garage, okay.
You're up.
Okay. One thing I don't know if I heard was about the seepage pit that I saw in the resolution of approval for the prior application, that there was a seepage pit that was installed for the garage that was in the back. Do you have any
I don't believe we
information on that?
could verify that that existed. That's
There was
one.
no cleanouts, couldn't find any cleanouts. We do know the roof leaders go underground. We just don't
Where,
know-
you're not sure?
We just don't know where. To be honest, the only place that really makes sense is in the driveway itself, because obviously the slope goes up behind and the leaders go into the pavement in the front of the garage. So the only place that really makes sense would either be right here or somewhere along the side of the yard of the house. But if it's under the asphalt already,
Right.
And the only thing we could do is possibly TV and camera it and see where it kind of trace it out.
So, so then are you suggesting that the drainage improvements that you're doing now will more than compensate for the fact that that may be a failed system that's on that garage?
I wouldn't assume that it's a failed system. We're proposing the driveway system for the driveway itself. The roof leaders would obviously account for the roof area of the garage, so it would be something completely separate and have its own benefits.
Okay. All right, so I'm not sure how to handle that. If it was, it was in the
Would there be
prior
another
resolution.
source to find drawings that would say where they are?
I guess
where
on
it is?
I guess on the previous application,
That's,
you know, that.
which would be
that-
filed somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, so I don't know if
Someone
that's-
has to go down to the basement.
Go into the catacombs.
Yeah, so the
If you don't have it.
applicant is willing, if we're, we don't know if it exists, we've looked, we've had them take a look, we don't know if it exists, we could certainly create one to the satisfaction of the board engineer in that area and satisfy that long condition,
So put in another
yes,
drainage capture system.
yes.
The driveway most likely would need to be milled anyway, so if it is under the driveway at that point, we may discover it. If it is in fact failed, we can completely tie those roof leaders into our system of proposing for the driveway itself.
So Marie, would we need to see any particular condition or language in this resolution?
I'm thinking just to keep it in keeping with what was approved prior, some previous board had said that there was drainage improvements there. You could look at this as being, a completely new drainage system that's going on there that is improved beyond what was there before. Even without, even if you pretended that system on the garage didn't function, you'd probably still have more storage capacity in what he's proposing than what's there. So, I could kind of see that maybe that's a trade-off. He's collecting more now. And as I was suggesting, even if that one had failed, even if the one on the garage wasn't really working, I still think you probably have more capacity now with what he's proposing on there. So I don't know, it would be up to the board if you want to say, you know what, you gotta collect all your water. I don't know that it's absolutely necessary.
We would just have to verify that rainwater's going somewhere.
It's going somewhere
It's going,
now.
well, but, I mean to the new drainage system.
Going somewhere positive now.
Yeah, somewhere positive, right?
Right. So, I'm sure it's on record somewhere with the original application. Only because it was called out specifically in that original resolution.
And that should be done. We should be taking care of that.
Right.
Yeah, as you know, the applicant is not cutting costs in the lease, so
Like to see that.
willing to do this.
So
Anything?
let's talk about some of the other storage, seepage pits. If you put one under the driveway, since I haven't reviewed any of that, if you were to put the seepage pits under the driveway, they would be in the front area, is that right? I couldn't
Yeah.
actually see the drawings very well, but.
I'm sorry, yeah,
That's
we
all
would be
right.
proposing it in the turnaround area.
Oh, in the turnaround area?
Yes, well, within that space, we can make sure we're at least 10 feet clear of the building foundation and clear of any, geographic retaining walls. So there's plenty of room in that area in the front to put those 3 tanks.
Okay. How big is that turnaround area? Is it a turnaround area, a parking area? What
It's
is
30
the purpose of it mainly?
It's exactly what it is. It's a turnaround area.
Okay.
It's 36 feet wide, and the depth of it, I do have a dimension in there, but I can't see it. But that's the intent of it, is just for it to be a turnaround area, not a formal parking area.
Okay, all right. Well, the reason I ask is because the architectural renderings do show a car that's parked in that spot. But when looking at the plans, your plans, it doesn't appear to me that it's actually deep enough to have a car that's parked in there. I mean, you could probably have a compact car there, but I was just curious what the thought process was on it.
Yeah, I mean, I did not design it to have a vehicle pull in head first and be able to back out as like a traditional parking space.
Okay.
And the architect can speak to that. You know, the thought was site circulation, having participated in a lot of the planning meetings, but Dan's still under oath.
So, Dan DiAgostino. So I want to specify that typically you would require 42 feet. So you have 18 feet for parking space, and then another 24 feet of lane. And that's what, I mean, I'm using a shopping center guide, but essentially what that is that's the amount of space that you need to pull back a car. In this circumstance, this is not going to be a convenient parking area. This is going to be somewhere that if there's a compact car that their grandparents, was one of the things they mentioned, are going to use to, and they're not driving SUVs or anything like that. So in a perfect world, if this was a parking area, it would be 42 feet. As Jeff just noted, it's only 36. And we're doing that specifically to minimize the steep slope.
So it's safe to say that the site plan more accurately reflects the depth of that area as opposed to
The 3D model, the
Yeah.
renderings are based on these dimensions, but you should go by these drawings, the engineering drawings, 'cause these are scaled in dimension.
Correct.
That rendering is exactly these dimensions here.
So do we know the depth?
So, yeah, it's 36.
No, that's the
No,
width.
no,
Oh.
that's the width. It
Oh, I'm sorry.
does not look like it's 18 feet deep off
You have this
of
guy?
the main
I
drive.
have
Because the driveway is 16 feet to the right of the house and almost 18 feet to the left.
Right.
So I can tell
17
you
feet.
that if it's roughly,
The dimension of the driveway is 16 feet, and you can see
I
that
was just gonna say,
the inset
yeah.
is not even close to
No.
that depth.
no.
Okay.
Now, the area left to the proposed building addition where these garages, this is a quite suitable area for turning.
Yes.
And I think if you
So
want
why
it
do
to
we
be this
need,
condition,
two?
you should tell us. That's all.
Parking?
Let's
To
get
be
one,
parking, yeah.
one question answered at a time. Yours was?
Yes, this area is a good point to do the turning. So why do we need a second one in front of the main entrance?
Because they might want to park it.
Yeah, that's what I think. It shouldn't be a parking lot.
It's temporary,
here.
yeah. Yeah, and they were mentioning that right now, they were there when mail was delivered on one occasion, and what the mailman does is they actually drive all the way up through the backyard to the driveway. They make a K-turn in their backyard and turn around. I think it would be more desirable for anybody to have that occur up front, as opposed to in their like private space where their garage is, and presumably their kid's basketball hoop is gonna be.
Yeah, my objection is the 36 front yard.
Okay, we got that. We're gonna
Yeah.
we'll come back.
I think you need to just testify as to what dimension you want separate from the driveway.
So it's going to be reflective. The dimension that we have here, which neither of us have our scale on us, I don't know how that happened, but it's me and you. I'm blaming myself too.
The driveway dimension's 16?
So it's 16, and if that's another 10 feet, that would be
Yeah.
26 feet
Right, okay.
Okay.
from curb to
So that's
to
your
curb.
testimony. It's
Correct.
26 total.
Correct.
They agree with you.
They're coming to get you if you're wrong, Jeff.
Okay, so if we have that area as a turning area, and you're thinking of also fitting in the seepage pits in that front area,
Yes.
how far back do those geogrids go on the wall? I'm thinking about, like, you know, you got water seeping down in there, but you've
Mhm.
also got a geogrid system in the wall.
Well,
Is
the,
that-
w- the,
is
the
that-
highest wall. Okay, so yes, the wall details themselves, the wall material has changed, so it's gonna be a brick veneered wall, so no modular block, no geogrid. It's gonna be a footing with a masonry wall with a veneer. So there will be no impacts, no conflict with any wall system.
So you'll have the seepage pit far enough away from both the wall and the foundation of the house, so that
Correct.
it doesn't affect the structural integrity of either one,
Correct.
right? So just to be clear, I have not reviewed any of that. I think I said that before, but I haven't reviewed any, you know, volumetric calculations or locations of those. But if you're gonna put it under the driveway, I would think you're going to wanna have some access, some manhole on top, so there could be some regular access to it for maintenance.
Yes,
Inspections
yeah,
afterward?
we'll provide ways to access and maintain it.
So this would be a condition then that you will get copies and either agree or bring it back to us.
I would think if the board is okay with that, I'm okay with that.
And I imagine, term it as a stormwater management plan to be submitted for your review and approval?
Yes.
Any objection?
Applicant's fine with that.
Great.
And it also sounds like you're adding additional seepage pits in the rear yard to account for some of the groundwater collection that you're doing.
Yes, one additional seepage tank to be in series with the two proposed 1,290 gallon tanks. So it'll have essentially the same volume as the three we're proposing in the front.
Okay, all right. And I had also, I'm not sure that I'm totally convinced about the access from the front of the house on, at the corner where it turns around into the back on that driveway. You have 17 feet wide, there's a wall, the wall has a thickness, the timber guide rail has to be on top of that wall, 2 feet from the face of the wall. Is there, could you talk a little bit more about that? There's 17 feet, there's enough
Sure.
area for that?
Well, the exhibit that I do have here, I know it's hard for you to see, and you haven't seen it, but I did depict the guide rail.
Okay.
I also depicted the guide rail 3 feet from the front face of the wall, and then an additional 1.5 feet, because you have the post and then you have the rail itself. So it's actually 4.5 feet from the front face of the wall. And I do depict a standard passenger vehicle being able to maneuver that as well. We can also increase the radius right at the corner of the house there too, to give more room that will not impact any additional steep slopes, which we most likely will do, but even in its current configuration, we can get a passenger car there without any conflict.
Okay, is it gonna remain at the 17 feet, or are you just giving me turning radiuses that work, or?
Well, the driveway right now is currently dimensioned 17 feet right at that radius. I think as a better design option would just be increase that inside radius a little bit to have a greater radius, just to allow for some more room. And we will most likely do that.
Okay, I think that might be better site circulation for the homeowner,
Yes.
just to have that, okay. Is there any thought to giving some kind of maybe wheel stops at the, at that, where that turnaround is?
Yes,
Something?
we will consider that. There will be something there, some safety measure.
Yeah.
Hasn't been discussed in depth, but obviously it's good practice, and we will put something there.
Okay, all right, good.
So would that be a condition then as well, that there's some
Yeah,
sort
so,
of?
and it's not that it has to be a wheel stop, it's gotta be something that.
To stop someone from driving over.
Yeah, somebody.
Some
Right.
protective
backing up or
device.
We could
even
potentially
pulling
even
forward.
just raise the wall itself, to, an additional, freestanding wall in that location, just to make sure that someone can have, something to prevent them from driving over. But we will provide something
Yeah.
after discussion.
Okay.
Providing something does that kind of make me comfortable?
No,
I'd
you have
like
to
to.
put a freestanding wall now, do you need a fall protection on top of it, which creates another issue?
It could create a taller wall now.
Yeah.
Or necessary, or a wheel stop.
Just trying to.
Yeah, I think this also is something that can be done to condition to the reasonable satisfaction of the board engineer.
If you're okay with that.
So wheel stops or some other
You're getting
form
this whole
of.
application.
Possible curb or,
Okay, we'll add that in.
Okay.
All right, give me 1 second. Just out of curiosity, where are you moving some of the electrical equipment? The generator and electric box are noted to be relocated. I think that might be on sheet 2. But I'm not exactly sure where they're going to. I don't know if I just missed that.
well, we're calling him to be relocated. They will be going in a conforming location. We just haven't physically specified the spot yet. We know we need to move it as a result of the new driveway. We just haven't had the physical discussion of this is where it's gonna go. But it will be in a conforming location.
Okay. And the zoning officer is pretty good about catching any screening that has to happen with that.
We are well aware of that, especially with the existing AC unit in the rear of the detached garage. And I know Krista doesn't miss a thing,
Okay.
because she also noted the existing pool filter equipment in its screening too, so we are aware.
All right, and I think that's all I had for now.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I have a very silly question, and it comes from my past experience. These houses are set so far back from the street, and I know the fire department signed off on it. That fire apparatus is gonna be pretty far from the house. Any consideration with the driveway to accommodate that, so they can maybe get something up there?
As far as a truck,
Yeah, I know you have I'm just throwing it out there. No stipulation, just something to think about maybe in the future or for the owners. I know the Belgian block is laid sideways on the driveway, so that helps a lot. But just something to think about, you know? I know the fire department has signed off, they're the experts, I get it, I'm just questioning it, that's all.
They want, what, 18 feet?
I think it is, yeah. Not that, and that's gonna create a whole can of worms, we don't wanna go down that road, I just want you to think about it, that's all.
like,
Don, just because you're a battalion chief doesn't,
Sorry, just
Uh,
old habits die hard.
you know, because okay. The only comment they made was build a code. Seems to be their alternate whatever.
Build a code, that's what they say.
Well, but the fire department has shown itself capable of raising concerns when it has them.
Exactly,
Yeah.
not
But
questioning
but
their expertise.
the other answer is that if they have to drive over the lawn, they're driving over the lawn.
Yeah, we've done that too.
Sorry, you'll redo the lawn later. We'll save the house first.
Right.
Exactly.
Any other questions? Silly or otherwise? Okay, seeing none, are there any questions from members of the public? None. Okay, board members, it's been a while. Do we want to take a break? We want to take a break, so we will take a 7-minute break and be back here at 12 after.
You're unusually precise. How about 7:15?
Well, I didn't want to go to quarter after, because we will anyway. Thank you all.
Do you have a prompter?
back? No. Yes, we Yes, we are. We're all back on that side? We're all back on this side? We're all ready, okay. We do that only to let the guy in the back know what's going on.
Okay.
Okay, we're back in order, and Mr. Attorney, it's
Thank you,
yours.
Mr. Chairman. Our next witness is Ben Heller, and this is not a witness that we originally had, and I think it demonstrates how the applicant is very interested in making sure that we get this right. So during the time between we got the review letters and now, he hired Mr. Heller, as a known landscape architect, does beautiful work to address some of the comments and also to make this a better application. So Ben Heller.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and spell your last name.
Benjamin Heller, Heller.
Thank you, and can you briefly describe your background and experience?
Sure. I am a 2010 graduate of Rutgers University and graduated with a degree in landscape architecture. I've been practicing landscape architecture for the last however many years now, since then, 14 years. I've been a licensed landscape architect in the state of New Jersey, state of Connecticut, and state of New York since 2017. I have been sworn in as an expert in the profession of landscape architecture in multiple municipalities across the state.
Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept his credentials?
If I could ask, how many of these kinds of cases with the direction that we're talking about with the wall and the steep slope and hiding the things from that, what's your experience been with that?
Sure. I've been involved in numerous cases, actually. Most recently was last year in Tenafly, New Jersey, where we had a successful application, steep slope. A very similar situation, had to stabilize some slopes, had to additionally screen some features. So yeah, very much so.
Okay, any other questions?
Failed to mention previous chairman of the planning board in West Orange, where I was a resident for a number of years.
Any other questions?
What was that?
Save that to the end.
No, forgot to mention that.
Then
Sorry
we will
about that.
accept your credentials and move on.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ben, you have one exhibit that you have already marked as A4. If you would just describe the exhibit and hand them out to the
Sure.
commissioners.
So this is the landscape plan, which is inclusive of the physical plan itself on the first page, some details and notes on the second page, the third page being a rendering, which we'll discuss, plan rendering, and the fourth page being some photos and some proposed three-dimensional renderings as well. Who would like the large copy? Who would like?
Stephanie.
Got it. All right. I'm going to be handing out half size to everyone else.
Stephanie's the keeper of all.
Thank you.
We better.
Should see my office.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ben.
Okay. Hear me? Good? So, truth be told, as a landscape architect, you dream of working on properties like this. This is a very much an Olmstedian type of a property. And for those of you who don't know what I'm referring to, Frederick Law Olmsted, the original landscape architect, right, who Central Park, he did the Essex County Park systems. He was the landscape architect. This property is very indicative of that era, hundreds of years ago, where you would have the house on the hill. It would sit very simply right in the middle of the property. You would have lots of mature trees. You would have lots of very clean and simple landscape. A lot of pachysandra and ground covers, some understory that would generally be at that time period, lots of rhododendrons, things like that, right? And I'm describing sort of a very picturesque moment. What I'm here to tell you is that I get to do the exact same thing, which is a dream for me, right? I have been in contact with John Linson, who represents the city, and he has
the forester?
He's the forester of the city, and he prepared the letter that I am in receipt of and in review of. In addition, I've also reviewed the letter from the Environmental Commission, Very similar comments from both of those individuals and parties respectively. Lots of mature trees, they might not be in the best of health. Now, why is that, right? My job is to take a look at that and understand the site conditions that may or may not affect these situations, right? Over time, trees get too large from where they were planted. These particular trees in general, as we've all been aware of now, are on a steep slope. Slopes and trees don't necessarily go well together, especially given the amount of storms that we've had lately. And the other thing that we have is we have a home that's also positioned relatively close to a number of these trees. So originally what had been proposed was 6 trees that were coming down shown on the engineering plan. I had been brought on. I went to the site last Tuesday on the rainy day, which we can talk about in a minute because I'll get to talk to you about my experience on the property while it was downpouring. And in addition to those shade trees that were originally being proposed, and given the letter from John Linson and given my conversation with him, it was recommended that I take down additional trees and any trees that are to remain be reviewed by a certified tree company and pruned accordingly. That's simple maintenance, right? And as you are aware, the applicant is inheriting a property that may or may not have been up to par with current maintenance practices and certainly other measures. So, where does that leave us today? 6 trees were originally planned on being taken out. 3 trees were being shown as saved. I am recommending that those 3 trees be removed as well, as per the recommendations of John Linson. In addition to that, I also see an additional 5 trees that would be negatively impacted, just generally speaking, from being on a slope and or potentially overgrowth, lack of maintenance, and et cetera. These were the recommendations of the forester, and I am completely in agreement that it's time that we replant and reforest and make this property the house on the hill with the mature trees again in the future. So why am I really excited about working on the property? Because I get to set the tone for the next 100 years, right? And I get to do it in a way in which I'm not going to plant the shade trees on a hill because I don't think that's probably the best idea. I'll plant them slightly downhill. So I'll take you through my landscape plan now, having given you my why I love this property speech. And I'll take you through some of my numbers. So on the first page of your packages that I've handed out, you will see my plant schedule, which shows 14 shade trees being replanted because 14 trees are coming down. The town ordinance does not actually specify the size of the tree that needs to be planted. The applicant would like to propose 2.5 to 3 inch caliber trees where applicable, and 2 to 2.5 inch caliber trees where applicable. Those are larger than what you would typically find in a nursery or anyone who is just going to be going ahead and planting just to make up the 1-to-1 ratio that's required. So already we're trying to prove a point that we are here to truly make this property beautiful again. In addition to that, and again, we're going to get into some of the renderings that I have, there is an existing understory of vegetation, as I had previously mentioned, some large rhododendrons, some flowering trees, and an understory basically between 0 and let's call it 10 to 15 feet tall. And you'll see some of the images, if you haven't already seen them, they are blocking, let's call it blocking, the lower portions of where the driveway is to be proposed. So right off the bat, you will not be able to see this wall. The wall that's being proposed from day one, based on just existing plants alone, you will not be able to see it. Now, that is not to say that those shade trees that are being removed will not also be affected, right? But the understory alone will completely block the brick wall that's being proposed. Now, if you don't believe me, I'm now going to go ahead and plant even more in that particular area to go ahead and show that we are really going to make sure you can't not just see the wall, but any cars that may or may not be proposed to, doing turnarounds or whatever it may be. So take you through the plan. One of the other things that I want to also make note as I take you through is, granted, we're here for steep slope variance. We want to stabilize those steep slopes, right? Today, as I had mentioned, I was on property last Tuesday when it was downpouring. That was that rain that we got. That was the day that I was basically brought onto this project. And the Pachysandra, which is currently existing on site, so for those of you who don't know what Pachysandra is, it's low ground cover. It soaks up and stabilizes steep slopes. So it soaks up the water, stabilizes steep slopes. And how do I know that? I was literally on the front lawn and I was not wet. I was wet because of what was coming down on me, but I was not wet by, I didn't even have boots on, so I was not wet in my feet at all. So what we're looking to do is more of that. Add even more Pachysandra in, add even more understory plantings in, add even more shade trees than exists today, and make this property the Olmstedian view for the next 100 years. So I will take you through sort of the journey as you enter. There's some existing boxwoods on either side. One of the things I failed to mention, there's about 100 boxwoods on the property. We're going to try to preserve those, transplant those however we possibly can to preserve, again, the plants that are on site. You enter, you've got boxwoods left and right, got a kind of a very nice and traditional entrance. We've added some flowering trees to the driveway. I'll show you what that'll look like. We've added some screening, some evergreen screening on, let's call it the bottom portion of my page, which is the south side. That is for two things. As you know, we're putting this addition on the house. We want to make sure that we're good neighbors, and should there be any concerns about views, we're accommodating for those views, and we are blocking any of the potential views that you put up that you could or would have to this addition. Along the, let's call it, front yard, that's where I've added all 14 of my shade trees. That's where I want to make another impact. I've done them in such a fashion where they'll be heavier sort of left and sort of right, so you still get that grandiose view of the house on the hill, but you've also added to sort of this, additional screening, let's call it, of any potential views that you may have from the street towards the driveway. In addition to that, I've added additional understory plants. You've got, and I'll take you through some of the names, viburnum, witch hazel, and mountain laurel. At the recommendation of the Environmental Commission, I've kept to all natives. Those are all native plants. They can get anywhere up to 10 feet tall. We're going to start them about 3 to 4 feet tall. They'll grow at a pretty rapid pace because they are natives. And then along the north side of the property, I've added evergreen shrubs. They'll do well. There really aren't any views that I'm expecting from the north side. It's mostly kind of overgrown shrubbery to begin with on the neighboring property, but we will go ahead and make sure that we're adding additional screening to make sure that we really don't see anything here. All right, so I'm going to actually flip ahead from my second page, which is just some notes and some details, and I'm going to flip to the third page. And yes, I'm a plant nerd. So this hopefully can depict to you some of what I'm trying to describe. There is a major amount of understory plantings that is in the middle of the front yard. That is right off the bat going to help with any of the potential concerns of views. What I've added, which is a little bit tough to tell in these renderings, but I'll show you in some of the three-dimensional renderings, are more flowering trees around this turnaround area, which will get anywhere from 10 to 15 feet tall. And that will take away any of the views of the cars. Existing today around the perimeter of the property is a nice hedgerow that's about 5 feet tall. That's an evergreen hedge. Again, no views that you can really see from the neighboring properties, so not too concerned about the addition. And in the main rear part of the property, there's existing evergreen trees. So the last thing I kind of want to point to on page 4 and it's probably easier to see on your pages than it is on mine. existing view on the top left-hand corner, you can see what I'm talking about. Because of the grade, the way that it exists today, and looking up at the house, you can see that massive amount of kind of stuff, which is really kind of just an understory of some mixes of native shrubs, and how that really sort of sets the tone for the house on the hill kind of theory that I've been talking about. And it also helps to kind of block any views that you may have. On the right-hand side, I give you a rendering of what I'm proposing, which now you can see sort of this kind of purpley kind of color. That's the flowering version of, it's called a Cercis canadensis. It is a eastern redbud, which is a native flowering tree. It's going to get anywhere from, like I said, 10 to 15 feet tall. That will take away the rest of the views that you would ever possibly have any concerns with. And you can see a couple more three-dimensional renderings. Again, I'm utilizing the same renderings that the architect had presented. However, now I'm adding the real vegetation that we're proposing into it. So you can really start to see the scale of what adding all of this vegetation really does. On the left-hand side, just because I wanted to show you some of what the existing kind of tree conditions are, you can see what I'm talking about when I say the proximity of some of these large trees. This is one of the large trees that's next to the existing garage, and I mean that thing's leaning, and it's heading right for that garage. Even if it doesn't fall itself, some of the limbs that may or may not fall from it are going to negatively impact that garage. In addition, you can see ivy growing all up and down the trees. Great and beautiful looking, not so great for health of vegetation, has a tendency of suffocating living things. The next picture that I have presented there, this is one of the trees that's being proposed to take down. You can see a nice chunk of the tree that's sort of marked that's missing right in the middle of the tree. And you can also see the proximity of the tree to the house. Again, not a good condition for any residents at all. And in the bottom, I've shown again a picture of some of these mature trees. It was very much the recommendation of John Winston that, you know, anything we can save, we get someone out there to prune, but ultimately try to take down what we can because of the concern of the health and really, again, the next 100 years, right? So just by the numbers, because I'm a numbers guy and I really like to point this out, we're planting 14 shade trees, 46 flowering trees, 20 evergreen trees, 102 shrubs, and just about 1,000 ground covers. That should 100% take care of any of the
And
concerns.
this inventory is on your plant schedule on page 1 of the exhibit?
Certainly is, yes.
Thank you.
I think that's it for me. I got one other thing that I'd like to point out, though, that none of the trees that we're proposing are considered landmark trees per the city. I know you have a landmark tree designation that's from December 1st of 1991. None of these trees are on that list.
Just one item I'd like to draw to the board's attention is the picture on the lower right-hand side, because I think it really depicts what the architect was speaking about in terms of visibility of the cars. And you can really see how the house is set up. So there really is not a scenario here where any car, or anything for that matter, would block the home. The home has significant stature to it, and based upon the testimony of the plantings, and even without the plantings, there would be no blockage just based on the elevation of the home. I have no further questions of this witness.
Maureen? You have any? Okay, board members.
So the question here, what kind of coverage do we have between the swimming pool and the house on the right side? Just grass?
That exists today.
Just grass?
It's
Because
grass.
there's the existing driveway that would go, so that would be replaced by grass.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. We have some plantings in the back, actually. There's an area in the back over here that you can see. I'm proposing some of the flowering trees go back there as well, and some more ground covers because it is a little bit of a slope back there. Again, I want to stabilize.
Just lawn?
No, plantings, flowering trees.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On the last page?
Yes.
Where you just had all the pictures?
Yes.
The existing condition, street view, when was that taken, that picture?
June of 2023. That's a Google Earth image from June of 2023. You can go on.
Okay, so, and then the proposed street view, that looks like it's a summer view? Do you have any winter views? of the front?
I do not have any winter views of the front, but the existing picture that I've taken, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Let me see. The existing picture that I took without flipping back. Some of the existing pictures that I took underneath that street view is from last week. I think you're going to see some images in the next round of testimony that'll answer sort of what it looks like in the winter. And as for proposed, no, I don't have anything proposed to show what the winter views are, but I can say that the branch structures that are there today are rather dense, and what I'm proposing is only going to add to that density. I don't want to propose anything. There are some evergreen shrubs, but I don't want to propose anything evergreen trees because that's when you get too grand and start to obstruct the view of the house.
Okay. And I have another question. I know you're talking, we keep talking about this driveway turnaround. So it's one thing seeing a car, but then it's another thing if the car has the headlights on. And the headlights, is there, which I would think would basically, would need more coverage than to actually see a car. I mean, how dense is this gonna be where?
Very. Yeah, I don't think you're going to notice the car. I don't think you're going to notice the headlights from the street at all. I mean, very, very dense. We're talking about a number of, like I said, in front alone, I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 flowering trees. I've added in the front alone all 14 of my shade trees. I've added the majority of those 100 shrubs are in the front yard. So, and a lot of them, like I said, are going in this front area to sort of block, and eventually they'll grow in and they'll get sort of where they are now, but we'll start them 3 to 4 feet tall.
I know somebody's going to tell me this is hearsay. You apparently met with Mr. Linson,
Had a phone call, yes.
and you met with him, and in his comments, he tells me that the front yard driveway, so it appears that a front yard driveway is, I'm not sure if he says warranted or unwarranted. I'm really having trouble reading it. But did you guys discuss the front driveway and?
Yeah, so his concern in general are that, first of all, the trees have declined over time. That's first and foremost. And secondly, anything that, any type of construction, anything you do on the site is going to negatively impact the root systems of the trees. Trees have, from what we know, trees have what's called the drip line, which is, if you think of a tree as a lollipop, right? I'm gonna stand there like this. The root systems that we are most concerned with are the ones that are just underneath what's that canopy, right? And anytime you do construction, I've shown these large circles, right? That's relatively indicative of what the coverage I'm talking about is on the canopy. Anything within that canopy, you're concerned that you're going to hurt the tree even more. Now, John and I had spoken, and I said, you do know that these trees aren't looking that great to begin with, and he said, well, yes, and that's why I would like them to come out kind of regardless. So this, of course, is sort of putting the cherry on top and saying we should definitely take them down. And that's sort of what his comments are on that.
Okay.
He says it's warranted.
Yeah, his report of February 2nd saying that the home can only be added onto at the rear, so it appears that a front yard driveway is warranted.
I spilled the coffee.
I hope that answered the question.
Okay, no, but I think getting his.
Yeah.
His feelings on it either way was,
So that was helpful.
especially with our prior discussion having, John is one of the people we listen a lot to.
Yes. I think you said
Okay.
27 years.
Any
he's
other
been here?
questions from the board?
Well, just assume that there's no problem, but obviously John Livingston is not seeing these plans
No,
yet,
no,
so
and
we
he-
need a condition.
Condition it,
Right.
certainly. He recommended if that's a thing, he'd be happy to work with me. I worked with him when I was in West Orange, so.
Yeah, they are responsive to that conversation, but certainly having it as a condition of approval is fine.
It just looks like you're adding a row of evergreens across the front street, just off the street, at least on this plan.
That's the back, that's existing.
That's the back?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the front.
That's
No,
the
no,
back.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Those are if you look at the images on page 4, on the left-hand side picture, the existing picture, those are existing
Okay, so you're not adding those?
yew. Yeah,
Okay.
you see these? Those are
All
called
right,
yew.
I thought there was a.
Yeah, no, it's okay. They're shrubs. They're shrubs. They've been there for a very long time.
quick question. I know the picture depiction from street level.
Mm-hmm.
What about neighbors across the street that are a bit more elevated? Would that still be a block? Like,
Yeah, I think they're going to see what they see today, which is just the house on the hill. That's my intention, is to take away anything that we're adding, but not anything more. That's why, quite honestly, the decision to go with flowering trees in that area was to purposefully get to kind of the car height, just above the car height, and let the house be still the glory that it is.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any more questions on this side? This side?
Just some, I think it was Allison sort of inspired this one because we should have done it. The pictures, the 3 existing pictures or existing conditions, you took them
Yeah,
last week.
last
and
Tuesday.
they're fairly, and they represent the condition of the
Yeah,
property. Thank you.
yeah, for sure. And I think you're going to see even more images the next.
Okay. Are there,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Heller. Olmsted would be
any
proud.
questions from the public for this witness? Seeing none, we may move on.
Okay. So our final witness this evening is John McDonough, who's going to testify in the area of planning.
Do you swear from the testimony, raise your right hand, please.
It's a first for me, wow.
Do you
I am
swear-
a southpaw, if
Is-
that counts.
Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Sure. Hi there, everyone. My name is John McDonough. That's spelled MC, capital DONOUGH, and I'm the project planner.
Thank you, and can you briefly describe your background and experience?
Sure. My license in professional planning is current and in good standing. I have the good fortune of getting to testify throughout the entire state of New Jersey, from our northern tip to the south, east, west. I've been here multiple times in the past as well. Your surrounding communities. I was in Chatham Borough till all hours on Thursday, so we're continuing where we left off last week. My license is current, it's in good standing, and I do testify in courts as well. I'm a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, which is our national certification. That's current and in good standing, and I am also a landscape architect, but obviously not the landscape architect on this project.
Any questions,
Any
or would you like
questions,
to?
folks? Okay, let's move ahead.
Okay.
Take it away. So again, you've heard the relief that the applicant is seeking. We're here in your R25 zone district, which has a minimum lot size of 25,000 square feet. We have a lot that's more than 3 times that in over 75,000 square feet. So we've got excellent spatial capacity here to provide for some flexibility and really correct what I think is a big problem that you heard at the outset with our architectural testimony through Dan. It's a site that has some irregularities associated with it. And towards Mr. Mallay's question, I think it was a good one about why would we take parking that is now in the back and hidden from the public view and move it to the front where it may cause an intrusion with this home. I looked at infrared photography, and all of the dozen or so, or the 2 dozen, 3 dozen homes that are around this property, this one stands out as the anomaly. It's the only one with that parking that for some reason wraps around the back. That's contrary to good planning. We don't want active space in our private space. Your backyard is your private space. Your front yard is your semi-public space, which leads to the public space of the roadway itself. That's where we want to have this interactive space with the public. You just heard through Ben's testimony that what landscape architects do is create illusion. We're able to hide things. We're able to hide things that you don't want to see and frame things that you do want to see. And I think that's been achieved here. But even if Ben wasn't able to do what he just did, you have a structure that is more than 190 feet from the roadway. So this is certainly not going to stand out as a driveway, if you will, that will bite at you as you go past this home, and will certainly not interfere with the beauty of the home that's there now. As I said, the current condition of the property, looking at infrared photography, and why do I use infrared? Because your area is so leafy and so lush, you can't see down into where the driveways are with normal photography. But infrared shows where those driveways are, and I was looking as the questions were coming up. And of those 30 or so homes around the subject property, none of them have parking in the rear. So this is an oddity in its current condition, and the applicant is fixing that, and also fixing the problem of the front door is in the backyard, and there is no front door in the front yard. So again, we have children here. We don't want to put active space where it would interfere in a backyard with where deliveries and drop-offs and pickups would be. So again, the applicant functionally and visually is fixing a problem that exists with an otherwise beautiful home right now. And as I said, we have excellent spatial capacity here to accommodate this driveway configuration that the applicant is proposing. As a predicate to my planning conclusion that the relief for steep slope can be granted here, and that's really the only relief that the board has to deal with, all of the other zoning criteria are met here. Importantly, through Dan's testimony, you heard that there's going to be full compliance with all of your bulk controls here. Most importantly, the floor area ratio. I'm sure this board sees a lot of FAR variances in your capacity as a zoning board. There's no FAR relief here for an otherwise oversized home. The setbacks all comply, the building height complies, the building coverage complies, the lot coverage complies. Top to bottom, we have full compliance here. The only relief is for a slope irregularity, given, again, the rugged nature of the terrain that this lot is on and what defines your beautiful community here. So what I'd like to do is just give the board some photographic evidence to take you on a quick little tour here of the property and show how I believe the relief can be granted without creating any substantially adverse impacts, given the physical characteristic of the landscape. It's just going to be 5 pictures here, and they will give a fair and accurate depiction of the property.
This is the planner's exhibit. We'll mark as A5.
A5, for the record, it's going to be 5 photographs. They're all taken by aerial drone photography of the subject property, and they were taken just a few days ago, February 29th, 2024.
And as that's passing out, maybe I misheard, or if not, please clarify. I believe you said the only variance relief that you're requesting is a steep slope, but the accessory garage being, or the accessory use of the garage being now converted to an active use with the upper story would also prompt that setback variance, is that right?
That is correct. I have that in my hit list as well.
Great.
Are they the same?
They should be the same. It's just one packet.
No.
Did you get one?
I did not.
We short one?
Are we short? I have.
Sorry about that. So again, we'll just take you through the 5 sheets here. The first is going to be a shot from the road, from Essex Road. And you can see we not only have horizontal separation here from the road, again, upwards of 190 feet or so, but vertical separation as well. And you heard through Ben's testimony, the house on the hill. Clearly that comes into evidence here. The driveway is a right driveway, it comes up on the right side, and the proposal here is to bend left instead of going behind the building, but to keep it in the front, and then snake around to match up with that detached garage that is presently there. So this next frame is sort of a reverse view. That first frame was looking from the street. This view is now looking on page 2 of, is it A5 again? Yes. Of A5 is looking back at Essex Road. And we just wanted to give you a little context here and orientation. The home is in the middle. The addition is right behind it. It's a paved area, although we do need slope relief. The addition is primarily confined to paved areas and areas that have been cleared. So not significant tree clearing here. There's a flat patio that's going to be removed. There is the existing garage that is going to remain. It is non-conforming as to setback, and again, the conversion of that physical space is what's triggering the relief, but no physical change in the building per se. The pool and the pool house are going to remain as well. So importantly, we're taking a paved area at the back of the home and basically moving it to the front of the house where it will be mitigated by distance and by terrain. Next page, page 3, is just from a slightly different angle. And if you really look at these photographs, what I told you about the infrared becomes evident as well. The home to the left, the home to the right, none of them have this parking arrangement in the rear. Across the street, there's no parking in the rear as well. So we're not breaking up any.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to cut in. They're not hearing you in the back. Do you mind using the table microphone
Yeah,
maybe?
apparently the back's turning red, so you're correct.
Sorry.
I'm gonna move this over here just so it doesn't get feedback.
Just turn it off.
Is off the circle or the line?
The circle.
It's off.
Sorry.
Do I need to start again?
No, no.
All right. Basically, the pictures here show you the paved area in the back of the house. That's where the addition is going to go. And then the remaining areas that are to remain. We're giving you some context here. We're showing the character of the neighborhood. Where parking in the front is the norm, not parking in the rear. Fourth frame is just sort of a slightly tilted down view, closer to the road. Again, to give you a sense of context and how this is not going to create a substantially adverse condition in terms of the site's integration with the surrounding landscape. And then finally, a top-down view where north would be to the top here, following Essex Road. The addition in the back of the house would replace the paved area, and then the logical courtyard would go in the front of the building, not the back of the building. So taking all of those photographs together, and just to tie this back to the statute, it's a single tax lot, Block 2509, Lot 26, about 1.83 acres. It's developed with that two-story, single-family home that's going to stay intact. The core of the home will stay intact. It's the addition coming off the back. The home dates back to circa 1929, so we're looking at a home that is upwards of almost 100 years old, or a century old. We're here in the northeast side of the town, near Millburn, near the border with Millburn, and the area consists primarily of one-family homes. Here in the R25 zone district, the zone is aimed at detached dwellings on, as I said, lots with a minimum requirement of 25,000 square feet. We talked about zone conformance, and in terms of the 2C relief that the applicant is asking for, the slope disturbance in the category exceeding 15%, where none is permitted, and I have 7,398 square feet is what's proposed. And then with the garage setbacks, we have 15-foot minimum requirements. On the side, we're at 4.33, and in the rear, we're at 1.75. Physically, that's not changing. It's just the change in use that's triggering the relief before the board. In terms of the justifications for the relief, I'm sure the board well knows the statutory criteria. You can go down the C1 path, or you can go down the C2 path. The C1 path is the older path, and if I go outside New Jersey, that's the only path I can use, is the hardship standard. Here in New Jersey, we're cutting edge in terms of planning and considerations. C2, we're allowed to apply balancing, where we look at the benefits of the application as a whole, substantially outweighing the detriments. This is a case where I actually find that both standards are met. It's not the applicant's burden to meet both, but this is an application that I would call double good because it does hit on both criteria. The board may disagree with me on one of them, but you always got the other as well to hit. So the justification under the C1 standard, relief clearly relates to the land and the structures that are lawfully existing thereon. We have parallels here with a case that was known as the Lang case, where we had an otherwise normal-sized pool. We have a normal-sized home here that meets all other zoning criteria, that was moved to a particular portion of the property where we had steep slopes, and the court found that it was the land that triggered the relief as opposed to the structure itself, or an oversized structure. So the case law is clear that where the land creates a practical difficulty, to construct an otherwise conforming building or building addition, there is a basis for hardship relief. So I think that's where the C1 comes into play, relief related to the land and the structures lawfully existing thereon. Working with an addition off an existing building is a practical difficulty in terms of avoiding steep slopes. Also, under the C2 balancing, we look at the benefits of the application as a whole. That comes from what we know as the pull-in case. And we see here the advancement of multiple purposes of zoning in the land use law, including Purpose A, the promotion of the general welfare, because home improvement will add value and quality to the site, which carries over, adding value and quality to the neighborhood as well. Overall, the living environment is going to be enhanced for a growing family that certainly wants to, I'll say, age in place here in your community or grow in your community. Additionally, we've got the advancement of Purpose I, the promotion of a desirable visual environment with obviously high-quality architecture, attractive building, and complementary landscape architecture. It's going to complement the existing homestead and the overall character of the neighborhood. Additionally, we've got the advancement of Purpose M, the promotion of efficient use of land, working with that which is there. This is a retrofit and a renovation as opposed to a wholesale knockdown and rebuild. We think that's in line with the planning goal for efficient use of land. And then finally, our planning goal for environmental preservation under Purpose E of the land use law by limiting site disturbance to land areas on the site that have been previously disturbed, essentially cleared or paved over, mostly lawn areas and the like, we think, again, are also an advancement towards that planning goal. On the flip side, the project detriments are minimal, if any, and relief can be granted without any substantially adverse impacts. As a predicate, we've got good, solid engineering testimony that address circulation, drainage improvements. You heard about the improvements there. The overall site stabilization, which is really at the core of why we have steep slope controls in the first place, to achieve site stability and environmental protection, is why those controls are in place. We've got good, solid architectural testimony that address aesthetics, balance, proportion, comfort, in terms of the overall living arrangement, and compliance with all the building codes. And then you just heard the landscape testimony addressing landscape protection and introducing many new plantings and overall design, deer-resistant plants, drought-resistant plants, a variety of colors and textures that will complement the area. This addition is going to be nestled into the hillside in the back there. It is not going to stand out as a sore thumb, as you will, but nicely integrate into the landform to the extent it will not be obtrusive or imposing. And as we now stand before you, based on the review reports of your professionals, we're looking at clean letters and really no open issues that would go towards the negative criteria. With that said, I believe all relief can be granted without any substantially adverse impacts to your zone plan. Likewise, that existing building is there. It's not changing. I think that also can tie into the benefits of the application as a whole. And in conclusion, the project is well designed. It will nicely integrate with the surrounding landscape. And based on all of the testimony that you've heard and seen, I believe the statutory criteria for grant of relief are met and approval is warranted. And with that, I think I'll pause. Hopefully the mic picked me up.
Thank you, John. A great job as usual. I have no questions.
Okay, Maureen?
I have no questions.
Questions from the board?
I've got one, just because you brought up that the square footage of the entire lot is 75,000?
Yes, it's more than 75,000.
5,000, okay, and so, I probably should have asked the engineer, but I think you can handle this too. The engineers, the submission said just under 7,400 square feet of steep slope being disturbed as under this application. So is it your testimony then that less than 1% of the property is going to be would be disturbed as a result of this?
Planners use very general numbers. We're not as precise, but yes, that's an easy calculation.
Wouldn't it be less than 10%? 10%.
10%, thank you, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Our math department.
It's supposed to be better than that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, any questions from the audience, from the public? Seeing none, at this point, we would offer you the opportunity to give us any closing statement.
I will make a closing statement. I'll make it very brief. We've had a lot of testimony. I want to thank everyone for their good questions and comments. This is definitely a better application as a result of the process that we went through with your town, and again, I thank you for that. I think you see applicants here that are very eager to move into this town and very eager to do it in the right way. We're correcting some woes of the past from the original, they're from the owner that we purchased from. And we have a very thoughtful, and I think you heard tonight from all of the professionals tonight, a very well-designed plan. It's more than a year in the making because the design process started prior to the acquisition of the home. You know, looking at, let's call it the legal stuff here, we have two variances. The variance for the garage is essentially the structure is pre-existing, the structure legally exists. The use, whether someone is looking at storage of old family photos up in a room that's been improved or is exercising in that room or yoga, there's really a small distinction there. But nevertheless, we wanted to remedy the woes of the past and ask for permission of this board because it's the right thing to do. The exterior structure is not changing at all, and frankly, the interior is not changing at all, and we're willing to comply with the regulations of the building code and make sure that it's up to fire capacity and that, any issues there are corrected. With regard to the proposed steep slope disturbance, we've heard a lot, but I think, two things really resonate to me. Number one, that these are huge drainage improvements. When we looked at, I think, 25,000 gallons of storage, whereby there may be none right now. We don't know if that driveway seepage pit exists or not. It was supposed to be there. We're going to put it there if it doesn't exist. And in addition to that, we have 25,000 gallons of storage. That is huge. In addition to that, they have 4 small children. And maybe we didn't hit this hard enough, but having access vehicles, delivery trucks in the rear yard where your kids are recreating is really not, it's not a good idea. Forget good planning, forget the legality of it, it's just a bad idea. And this application seeks to correct that. So based on the testimony of all of the witnesses, all of the supporting evidence that we provided, the commentary that we provided to all of the applications, I believe that the statutory criteria to grant the relief is there, and the board could feel very comfortable approving this application. And again, I thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will go to our conditions, which I think are a few.
A few. I have 6 of them.
Okay.
So first, we have compliance with those conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum. Second is that the applicant shall record a deed restriction which prevents overnight accommodations in the existing garage. Third, the existing air conditioning condenser near the property boundary shall be relocated to a conforming location. Fourth, the applicant shall submit a stormwater management plan to the board engineer for review and approval. Fifth, that wheel stops or some other form of vehicular protection shall be added to the plans and shall be submitted to the board engineer for review and approval. And sixth and finally, the applicant shall submit the landscaping plan to the city forester for review and approval.
And the number of votes required?
4, because only C variances are being sought.
Okay. Do you agree with all the conditions?
I do, Chairman.
Marie, are you okay with the ones that affect you?
Yes, I am.
Okay, who would like to open up deliberations?
I would.
Go ahead.
I appreciate that the applicants are honoring the historic relevance of this home and keeping all the changes to the rear of the house, and appreciate that. I mean, if you're moving to a town that has, it's, especially this is the North Side Historic District, I think that's important to keep the feel of the neighborhood. Also appreciate that you took the comments from the Historic Preservation Commission regarding the front of the house, the front door area, and that also is appreciated. I'm a little concerned with it's called a turnaround. It's called in the pictures, there's a car, the spot in the front of the house where there's a car parked in one picture. It's been mentioned as a turnaround, and then I think the landscaping plan, it was called like a motor, there was a name, same thing, reference to parking. So my issues are basically that parking area in the front. I understand that you can't have a driveway in the back. That makes sense to move into the front. But I think that if it's a driveway in the front, they're fine. The fact that there's some sort of parking, I'm concerned with. And in addition, the pictures that the last set of pictures that did show the current view of the house, I mean, it's winter, the trees are bare. You could see right up there, and my concern with having any sort of spot where people can park is in not only seeing the cars, but also the headlights. I mean, the cars, they're LED, the new headlights. It could be something that would be glaring across to the home across the street, so I cannot support this application.
Mr. Chairman?
Tom?
Yeah.
You got it?
Yeah. So I will support this application. You know, the reasons are it's a very large lot, which can definitely accommodate the addition that's being built. Obviously, there are no variances needed for the addition. There are no variances needed for the driveway parking area in the front. The variances are for steep slope and for the use of the attached garage. So I think a lot of the properties in the neighborhood do have the parking area in the front, and they have much less screening than this property will have. I'm happy that the applicants put so much effort into stormwater management, and again, we've had a couple of these recently, very extensive effort into landscaping. Appreciate that both. It's going to make this historic property even more attractive than it is now. What else can I say? Appreciate that you're addressing some of the technicalities, moving the AC condenser off the property line into your property. Hope we get that deed restriction recorded. Something should have been done before. Hopefully it gets done this time. And yeah, for all those reasons, I don't see significant negative impacts on the neighborhood. And I think that the positive impacts far outweigh whatever negative impacts there are in terms of improving the specific property and improving, you know, the quality of the overall neighborhood. So I can support it.
You're up.
Great. I agree with Tom. We, as a board, have had a very long and ongoing conversation about steep slope variance. I personally feel like it's an out-of-date statute, that it needs to have some sort of connection or ratio to the size of the property. I think it's easy to see the amount of disturbance in relationship to the enormity of the site makes it less than 10%. So that is a very reasonable request, and it's very clear that the positives greatly outweigh the negatives. Tom mentioned stormwater retention, which is clearly fantastic in this project. The safety for the children outdoors, it's pretty much a no-brainer. Go with option 2 for the door, by the way.
And he's an architect.
And I don't understand why we're talking about parking in front of the house. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a driveway in Summit that does not have cars parked next to the house. So that is a silly argument. It's something that we shouldn't even be worrying about. If you give it the scale of the driveway, the scale of the areas where the cars can be placed relative to the size of the lot, the size of the house, the distance from the street, it really is a non-issue. So with that, I can definitely support this application.
Anyone else wish to open up?
I'll just add to it. I do think any adverse impact has been thoughtfully mitigated here. And you know, looking at that last picture, you know, I think the landscape plan will address that plus some. So again, for a young family, any family trying to enjoy this property, I think it's, you know, the drive needs to be in front of the house, open up the back, safety, a number of factors, but I can support this.
Any other comments?
Yeah, if I may, I was a little hesitant, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, a little hesitant about the turnaround in front of the house, but listening to testimony and the landscape architect and the detailing he's got into, I was worried about the steep slope being disturbed, but again, on the percentage-wise, it's minuscule. And as mentioned, the stormwater's fine, so originally I was a little hesitant, but I can support this application.
Anyone else? If not, I will sum up that basically this has been, it's a huge piece of property. They did an awful lot of work on it before they ever even got any, and they still haven't gotten into it. Hopefully, we will be taking a step tonight that will help them move forward faster, because there really are no negatives. As much as I would like to look and find one and search one out, but I just simply can't find one. And I see so many positives for 4 kids, for the family, for the neighborhood, people going by. You know, it's a long driveway, folks. Nobody's going to have a problem with that. And the steep slope, as everybody has said, is a minuscule number of things. And yes, I think a door in a house should be in the front. I really do. With that, I would accept a motion to approve this application.
So moved.
Second.
And can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Chairman Steiner?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Curran?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
No.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Again, I don't have to tell the attorney to read the resolution, but I think your clients are in the room. They should read the resolution, and we'll move forward. We have a number of pieces of business for us to continue, so continue, Ms. Vasilios.
Sure. Okay, so we have a few resolutions for memorialization. The first one we have is 24 Russell Place. That's ZB-23-2225, Block 4101, Lot 3. The applicant was Michael Moran. Our eligible voting members are Chairman Steiner, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, Ms. Zahn, Mr. Curran, Mr. Malay, and Ms. Toth. Can we have a motion
Moved.
and a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yeah.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Mr. Curran.
Yes.
The motion carries. The next one we have is 5 Robin Hood Road. That's ZB-23-2223, Block 2405, Lot 34, and the applicants were Kevin and Ryan Holmes. The eligible voting members are Chairman Steiner, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Curran, Mr. Malay, and Ms. Toth. Would someone like to move that?
I'll make a motion to move.
Okay. Chairman Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Ms. Toth.
Yes.
The motion carries. The last one we have is 259 Summit Avenue. That's ZB-23- oh, actually, I messed up the number. Does anyone have what the application number is handy? I added an extra number in.
The application number?
Yeah, I added an extra number. Oh, I see it. So it's
2209?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
2209.
Yeah.
I added a 1 in there. It's Block 2105, Lot 17. The applicants were Rahman and Salma Iqbali. Our eligible voting members are Chairman Steiner, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, Ms. Zahn, Mr. Curran, Mr. Malay, and Ms. Toth. Would someone like to move that?
So moved?
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Chairman Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Ms. Toth.
Yes.
The motion carries. And then finally, we have the minutes from February 21st. We can do a voice vote for that, but we will exclude our members who were excused that evening, which were Vice Chairman Loiketz, Mr. Malay, and Mr. Feskins. Can we have a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, the motion carries.
Okay, the annual report. Scott, where are we?
We've collected suggestions from various committee members. Now we just need to collate it, pull it together, and then send it
Give
out.
it, we have to give it to everybody to take a look at it, because now it's possible that I could suggest something that nobody else wants to do, so we will make sure that everybody gets a chance to look at it. And hopefully by March 18th, we will be able to vote on it and then submit it to the planning board and the city council. Okay? Any,
Sounds good.
No, I just note that the compilation here, there's a I guess two different people talked about accessory dwelling units.
right, they
So
got to
we've
be pulled together.
Yeah.
We'll
Right.
combine those.
And there are some others, and there are others in there that, from our current report, there are other items that we still have standing. So we're gonna have to bring those in and say, do we want to ask them again?
I
Do we
would
want to
think
ask
so.
them to do that? What?
Well,
Yeah, I would think so.
Well, the question is, do we want to
I
or
mean,
not? And then
I mean,
what are they?
historically, that had been sort of, we added on to the existing document.
It might be something that we all still think we should be doing and asking them to do again, so
Because they've never done it.
we'll get all of that.
I
And
mean,
that's
no,
I mean, in the
last
past,
year's
in the
report.
past, we have dropped things where obviously the council
We
doesn't
we
act on it.
got an idea they're not gonna do it, so,
Okay.
we may lose the portrait.
Well, but
share if they make
wasn't last year the first time the planning board kind of realized we were giving them annual reports?
And from what we understand at the meeting the other day, they basically created a committee to work on it.
I thought that there were supposed to be people on this committee who were working, I mean, that they wanted a couple of zoning board members to work on them with it.
I don't know if they haven't asked me for one, but I
Okay.
know that they do have a committee that's supposed to be working,
Okay.
so.
Well,
okay.
we do have a mole there.
I have a question. For those suggestions, are we gonna vote on them, or just everybody?
No, we're gonna put them together, we're gonna just have a discussion, just like we are now, and if 8 people say suggestion A should get out, we'll take it out.
Is there, I mean, is 8, is there?
No, I'm
is
just
there-
using-
No, but I was
I-
just
I-
wondering legally, like, is there?
No, all 11 of us will participate.
Okay.
But I think what she's asking, a majority of board members could vote no, and we
Yeah, I
would
think
remove that.
for the discussions, when we adopt the whole thing, I think it's the 7 original members. if I'm
No, what I
correct.
mean is, if there's one particular provision that people object to, if a majority don't want that provision in there,
Right.
the majority can
We'll
vote.
take it out.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Great.
Okay? Yeah, we're going to be a congenial group by the time we're done.
We aren't already?
I think we're doing all right.
Our next meeting is on March the 18th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please leave.
Also, we could stay longer.